Today, Omaha City Council voted against roundabouts as part of a change that would turn Farnam Street into a two-way all-day road. After a 4-hour hearing, the motion to reject roundabouts passed unanimously 7-0.
But that vote could also halt any other traffic changes for the popular corridor. 6 News' Bella Caracta reports.
We're relieved. We're relieved that the City Council took the 800 and some petitions and did the right thing. I mean, stood behind their constituents.
It's a win, and I think it's a wonderful, I want to thank the City Council members for voting against it. Roundabouts have their place, but not in a historic neighborhood like Dundee.
The councilman representing the Dundee neighborhood put forward the motion to deny roundabouts.
It was very clear to me that the consensus of my district, especially that neighborhood, was not to support the roundabouts.
Some of the concerns residents raised were about pedestrian safety, especially children and those with disabilities.
So just imagine your third grader is navigating a roundabout. I just want to remind you that children do not have airbags.
I would like to see more data on roundabouts so that we're just not trading off one fatality for another.
In a letter to the Dundee Memorial Park Association's president back in November of last year, Mayor Gene Stothert said that, quote, roundabouts are the safest option and is the only option that will be considered.
Public Works wouldn't support that change without some kind of improvement, and specifically a safety improvement at 50th and 52nd.
Okay, thank you.
That was 6 News' Bella Caracta reporting. Council members made it clear today that with the available information, there's no guarantee about how or when turning Farnam Street into a two-way all day will be revisited.